Paradox 1. Religion is magic sanctioned by authority. From the book Paradoxes of the Highest Science by Eliphas Levi. Magic is the divinity of man conquered by science in union with faith. The true Magi are men gods, in virtue of their intimate union with the divine principle. They are without fear and without desires. They are dominated by no falsehood. They share no error. They love without illusion and suffer without impatience. For they leave all to happen as it may and repose in the quietude of the eternal thought. They lean upon religion, but religion does not weigh on them. Religion is the sphinx which obeys, but never devours them. They know what religion is, and they feel that it is necessary and eternal. For debased souls, religion is a yoke imposed through self-interest by the poltronaries of fear and the follies of hope. For the exalted souls, religion is a force springing from an intensified reliance in love of humanity. Religion is the collective posse of great souls. Her fictions are more true than truth itself, vaster than infinity, more lasting than eternity. In other words, they are essentially paradoxical. They are a dream of the infinite in the unknown, of the possible in the impossible, of the definite in the indefinable, of progress in the immutable, of absolute being in the non-existent. They are the ultimate rationale of the absurdity, which affirms itself to deny doubt. They are the science of foolishness, the embrace of folly and knowledge. They are the cries of the eagle mounting above the clouds, the roar of the lion of the apocalypse that takes itself wings and flies away, the bellowing of the bull beneath the sacrificial knife, and the never-ending moan of mankind before the portals of the tomb. For man, God is and can only be the ideal of man. In himself, he is the unknown, but in his revelation, at once divine and human, he is paradoxical man, the substantial without substance, the personal without definition, the immutable which transforms itself but has no form, the omnipotent ever struggling with the weakness of man, the serenity which thunders, the mercy which damns, the infinite goodness which tortures, the eternity which perishes, an infinite contradiction, the abyss of the human heart, serving as a world for an insatiable and terrifying idol, the cruelty of Nero, the policy of Tiberius drinking the blood of Jesus Christ, a Pope Emperor or an Emperor Anti-Pope, the King of Kings, the Pontiff of Pontiffs, the Executioner of Executioner, the Physician of Physicians, the Liberator of the free, the inflexible master of slaves. God is everywhere the ideal of those who ignorantly adore him. Ferocious among savages, instinct with human passions amidst the Greeks, an Oriental despot for the Jews, for the Ultramontes as a celibate priest, one and all create a personage whom they endow in an infinite degree with their own characteristics and their own defects. Every man adores the God whom he has made for himself in his own image, or has allowed authorities who have more or less an interest in his ignorance and weakness to impose upon him. To adore in fear and trembling is almost to hate, though the fear disguises the hate. To adore fearlessly is to love. True piety, which is the foundation of religion, is the exaltation of love. For love, raised to a high pitch, admits no longer the barriers of the possible. The impossible is its dream, and miracle, for it, reality. What will avail a religion that did not give us the infinite? What is Protestantism with its sacrament devoid of reality? Sad as an extinguished tapered or a dismantled church? How can the bread consecrated by the word represent Jesus Christ if it is not Jesus himself? What folly if the Christ not be divinity? A fine piece of worship, truly, to chew a mouthful of bread. Alas, for him who cannot feel the necessity for a miracle here, one can love a human being to death, to the forgetfulness of self, to madness. But can one immortalize him and make him divine? In faith in making him divine and immortalizing oneself along with him? Can one incorporate him in oneself, eat him altogether, and feel that he lives in us and outside of us, that he absorbs us in him as we absorb him in us, in bringing us into communion with his vast being and his eternal love? Alas, we feel that he is neither eternal nor vast. Why is he not God? Why? Because God alone is God, and this is how God comes to us, veiled under the appearance of bread. We see him, we touch him, we taste him, we eat him, and his eternity trembles within our mortal flesh. The blood which palpitates in our heart is his. Our bosom swells. It is he who breathes. But the Protestants, these Protestants with their mouthful of bread and sip of wine, truly a fine sacrament they have there. Faith, the poet enamored of the ideal, smiles at the ridiculous reality, but the fanatical believer grows exasperated. Reason says we should pity the Protestants. No, says infuriated faith, we must punish them. The God which I feel grow wrathful within me condemns them to hell. Why should I grudge them in the burning pile? Hold, miserable assassin, dost thou then believe that God made himself man, that man might make himself a tiger? Thou believest thyself to have conceived with infinite love, and behold, thou art in labor with hate. Thou hast thought to devour heaven, and behold, thou vomest hell. Thou hast eaten the flesh of Christ, not as a Christian, but as a cannibal, sacrilegious communicant. Hold thy peace and cleanse thy mouth, for thy lips are dripping with blood. Doubtless religion must not be held responsible for the crimes which the policy of barbarous ages have committed in her name. Many heretics were at the same time the agents of conspiracies and seditions. The massacre of Saint Bartholomew was cruel, ruse de grave. The perfidy which is perhaps explained in the necessity for rendering abortive a plot, none less perfidious. Thus, at any rate, did the Queen Mother of Charles IX endeavor to justify their action. This, at least, is certain that at that period, both parties were capable of any outrage. But what could ever justify the Inquisition? God made himself man, it may be replied, and these grand words were understood by Pius V in a terrible, and by Vincent de Paul in an adorable sense. Did not God, according to the Bible, repent himself of having made man? Cruel exaggeration of human iniquity. It is assumed, to have been so gigantic as to make God waver in his purpose. Man defines himself even in his crimes, and dreams of opposition to the eternal. The irreconcilable revolt of the damned, and thenceforth the cruelty powerless hate of a God, unable any more to pardon. Well, even this is sublime in its horror, and the Catholic dogma is admirable even to its most dreadful depths for those souls which realize its poetry without becoming victims of its seductions and its infatuations. God appears to repent himself of having made man, because man from time to time repents himself of having made a God. Divine fictions succeed each other like the ages. Jupiter dethrones Saturn, and the Jesus Christ of popes reigns in the palace of Jehovah of the Jews. The Jesus of Saint Dominic is still nonetheless the son of a cruel God of Moses, but the ferocious beast of Daniel in the Apocalypse must inevitably disappear to make room for the dove and the lamb. God will truly have made himself man when he shall have caused men to become as good as God ought to be. The genius of man, in developing itself in the course of ages, unrolls the genealogy of gods. It is in the genius of man that an eternal ancient of days begets a son that must succeed his father, and in which proceeds, from father and son, the spirit of knowledge and intelligence which shall explain the mysteries of both. The Trinity, does not this issue from the very vows of humanity? Does not man feel it to be eternal in three persons, the Father, the Mother, and the Child? In the human Trinity, is not the Son as ancient as the Father? For the Father also is the Son. Is not the woman the immaculate conception of nature and love? And this, her conception, is not stainless, for the sin of love ends where maternity begins. There is a virginity in the sanctity of the mother, and since God has made himself man, that is to say, since God neither really lives for us, nor personifies himself, nor thinks, nor loves, nor speaks, save only in humanity, the ideal woman, the typical woman, the collective woman, is truly the mother of God. There is redemption, that is to say, solidarity amongst men. The good suffer for the bad, and the just pay the debts of the sinners. Thus, all is true in the dogmas of religion when once we have the key to the enigma. Catholicism is the sphinx of modern times. Place yourself under its talons without guessing its riddle, and it devours you. Guess its riddle without conquering it, or only half guess it, and you are doomed, like Oedipus, to misfortune and self-imposed blindness. An intelligent Catholic ought not to leave the church. He ought to remain in it, wise amidst the ignorant, free amidst the slaves, to enlighten the former and liberate the latter. For I once more repeat that there is no true religion outside the pale of Catholicity. The rationale of a religion is to be irrational. It is nature to be supernatural. God is supersubstantial. Space and the universe, substance, are the infinite. God is within it, for He is the knowledge and the power of the infinite. The infinite is the inedible absurdity which opposes itself on science. God is the paradoxical explanation of the absurdity which imposes itself on faith. Science and faith can and ought mutually to counterbalance each other and produce equilibrium. They can never amalgamate. The eternal Father is Jewish. The good God is Christian. The divinity of Jesus Christ, the Pope, and the devil are Catholic. But charity, which is Catholic in a way preeminent, will suppress the devil and convert the idolatrous of the Pope. Original sin is Jewish, pardon is Christian, and the sacraments, Catholic. Fanaticism is of Jewish birth. Good sense is Christian. Simplicity and intelligence are Catholic. But pretensions, folly is Protestant. Don Juan, Voltaire, the first Napoleon, Benillude, Policinello, Peyrot, and Harlequin are Catholics. But Mons, Brougham is Protestant. What is worse, a Freemason. Philosophy is aesthetic or Christian. Poetry is Catholic. And egoistic and mercantile Jujuists are Protestant. This is why France is Voltairean but still Catholic, whereas the English are Persian and are Protestants. Yes, gentlemen of the ecclesiastical hierarchy, said the Catholic Galileo, the earth is fixed if you desire it. It is the sun which revolves. I will say more if you demand it. I will say that the earth is flat and the heavens made out of crystal. Would to God that your skulls were the same as the material as to allow a little light to penetrate your respected brains. You are authority, and science is bound to bow. She can afford to bow when she meets you, for it is she who remains. You who pass away, you are successors. Will ye be forced in their turn to bow to and live in peace with her? Rabel is not less learned and not less a Catholic than Galileo wrote the following prologue to his fourth book of Gargantua. If in life my writings, my speech, nay, even in my thoughts, I detect the faintest glimmer of heresy, with my own hands should the dry wood be collected for the fire kindled to burn myself on the pile. Do you see here Rebellious, the Inquisitor, burning himself? Rebellious, accused of heresy? This reminds one of God, causing God to die in order to appease God. It is inexplicable, as a mystery should be, but it is only the more essentially Catholic. Nothing so excites the imagination as mystery, and the excited imagination electrifies and multiplies tenfold the will. The wise are called to govern the world, but it is the madman who overturns and metamorphs it. This is why madness is considered by Eastern nations as something divine. Indeed, to vulgar eyes, the man of genius is a madman. In truth, he has, perhaps, some grain of madness in him, for he almost always disregards common sense to obey the sublime sense. Moses dreams of the promised land and drags away into the desert a horde of herdsmen and slaves who murmur, rebel, kill each other, and die of hunger and fatigue during 40 years. He will never reach Palestine. He will die, lost in the mountains, but his thought will have swept the heavens, and he will bequeath the world a God unique and a universal code. From the shade of Moses, unburied, will issue the immeasurable glory of Jehovah. He created a people and commenced a book, a people bravely mean in its tenacity, at once superb and servile, a book full of shadows and lights, of a grandeur and absurdity alike superhuman. This book and this people will withstand all force, all science, all political combinations, and all criticism of the nations and the revolving ages. From this book, civilization will derive its worship. From this people, kings will borrow their treasures. And who now dare to judge the man of the Red Sea and Mount Oreb? What rationalistic philosopher can think that he was wise? But who, capable of appreciating great things, could dare to call him foolish? Shall we speak now of Jesus Christ? But here we should bow before him who half the world adores. What great hierophant, what ancient oracle could ever have foreseen this God? What astrologer, what diviner? What astrologer or what diviner could have conceived the idea of saying to the Emperor Tiberius, at this moment, a Jew of Galilee, proscribed by his own people, denied by his friends, and condemned by one of your perfects, is dying in agony. After his death, he will dethrone the Caesars, and those who will claim to continue his inconceivable dynasty will reign in Rome in your place. All the gods of the empire and the entire world will fall before his image. The instrument of punishment will become the symbol of salvation. What madness is Christianity if it be not superhuman? What an awful faith that in Jesus Christ, if he be not God. What you conceive a mental disease, contagious enough to infect with delirium through a long series of centuries almost the whole humanity? What a deluge of blood has the abolisher of blood in sacrifices caused to flow? What implacable hatreds, what vengeance, what wars, what tortures, what massacres has not this promulgator of pardon excited? But Jesus was more than a man. He was an idea. Nay, more than an idea, a principle. I am a principle, said he, speaking of himself. God has made himself man. Thus is proclaimed upon the earth the worship of humanity. Emmanuel, God is in us, would say as they embraced each other, the brothers of the Rosy Cross, initiated in the mystery of the man God. For truly the Son of Man is at the same time the only and multiple Son of God. You are one with me, said the Master to his disciples, as my Father and I are one. He who hears you hears me, and he who sees me sees my Father. Triumph and miracle, God is no longer unknown to men, because man knows man. He is no longer invisible when we see our neighbor. He is the benefactor who assists us. He is the poor man whom we assist. He is the sick who suffers, the physician who heals. He is the sufferer who weeps and the friend who consoles. And a woman, how Christianity elevates her. What an assumption is hers. The woman is the mother of God, since God has made himself man, a virgin. We can love her with all aspirations to infinity, a mother. But it is no longer sufficient to love her. We must adore her as we adore grace and providence. The law of pardon on her lips. She is peace and mercy. She is nature and life. She is obedience, free and liberty, self-submitting. She is all that we should love. Recite in her honor the litanies of the Virgin Mother. I salute you, gate of heaven, temple of ivory, sanctuary of gold, mysterious rose, sacred vase of devotion, honorable vase, admirable vase, pixies of love, cup of holy desires, star of the morning, ark of the alliance. Oh, cries of love to all those martyrs, self-condemned to eternal widowhood, raised without comprehending them. Oh, thee, oh, cruel, dispiriting sight of all these tentaculates thirsting for a draught that ever eludes them and provoke no longings by fruit ever denied to their lips. Sublime dreamers, they renounce woman to gain heaven, as if heaven was something without woman, and as if woman was not the queen of heaven. O trespass of Adam, happy trespass, sings the church in her liturgy. Happy trespass, which has deserved to have God himself as its Redeemer. O sin of Adam, sin truly inedible, thus escaping the sacred chants, the innermost secret of the sanctuary. But those who repeat these mysterious words fail to catch their true sense, and their hearts, burning perhaps beneath the ashes, accuse themselves of a desire as though it were a shame and a regret, and as though it were an infidelity. Religion, then, is the exaltation of man, and the assumption of the woman. Comprehension of religion is the emancipation of the spirit, and the Bible of the Hierophants is the Bible of liberty. To believe without knowing is weakness. To believe because one knows is power.